At the beginning of the movie, we see a man named Pablo die and his daughter, Monet, collapses. Later, we see Pablo's coffin being taken for burial. On the way, Monet's body starts to stiffen and tremble before she collapses again. Just then, a crow flies overhead. When Monet regains consciousness, she asks if her father has already been buried. Her mother, Rosa, replies that they waited for her to wake up, but the grave diggers couldn't delay any longer. Monet, devastated, says she didn't even get to say a final goodbye to her father and starts crying. Her husband, Jack, comforts her. That night, someone knocks at the door. Monet calls out to her maid, Frida. The knocking continues and suddenly door opens. Pablo yells, "Don't let him in!" Monet is then seen outside the house. She knocks on the door and jolts awake. Jack is sleeping beside her. The scene then shifts to Monet telling Rosa about the dream. She says, "Dad's eyes looked terrified." Rosa responds, "That's just how it is. He's scared. He doesn't know where to go yet." Monet says he told her something, but she can't remember what. Later, Jack tells Monet that his child from a previous legal marriage is ill and needs him. Understanding the situation, Monet tells him to take the car and asks him to return by the 9th day, the final day of the prayers. She then gives him some money for gas and food. Rosa gets upset with Monet for letting Jack leave, complaining there's still so much prayer work left and no one to help, before storming off. Later, Jack gives a talisman to Keith, his and Monet's son, telling him never to take it off. He then leaves. After he's gone, Frida notices he forgot something. It's a painting. Monet decides to take a photo to send to him. As Keith stands in front of a painting, she snaps the picture. Rosa sees the painting, tenses up, and warns Monet not to bring it inside, urging her to sell it as soon as possible. Monet ignores the warning, and a crow is seen cawing from a tree nearby. The first day of prayers begins, with a group gathered to pray in Pablo's memory. Just then, Rosa hears a crow cawing nearby and hurriedly shoos it away. Later that night, Henry, one of Monet's helpers, is playing a game in his room. Suddenly, several locusts enter through the window and scatter around. One lands on his neck. He brushes it off. Another lands on his hand, and he decides to burn it. As he tries, his hand bursts into flames. Panicked, he opens the door, an eerie entity emerges, and both vanish. Then we see Henry's image appears briefly in a painting before disappearing. The next morning, before leaving for the market, Monet asks Frida to wake Henry to watch the shop and Keith. Frida enters Henry's room, but finds it empty except for some straw. She tells Monet what she found. In the market, Monet suddenly feels unwell. Frida quickly gives her medicine, and Monet asks her to continue shopping while she rests. Rosa scolds Monet for not taking her medication on time, warning that anything could happen to her and that Keith is too young to lose his mother. When they return home, they notice a car parked outside. They warn Keith never to let anyone in when he's alone. Keith says a woman claimed to be Grandpa's wife. Hearing this, Monet rushes inside. At that moment, Rosa notices a crow on a tree. Inside, we see Adele, Pablo's legal wife, who introduces her daughter Andy and son Roy to Monet. Monet says she remembers them. Andy immediately complains about developing an allergy upon arriving, and Adele starts criticizing the condition of the house. Roy says he told her they should have stayed at a hotel. Andy insists, "Why a hotel? This is our house." Monet then introduces Keith to them and asks if they'd like to visit Pablo's grave. Adele declines. She glances at Rosa's photo and flips it upside down. Rosa sees this and yells, "Make them leave!" Later, Keith asks Monet if Adele is his grandfather's wife. Why isn't she his grandmother? Monet explains that she isn't, but he should still show respect. He then asks if Andy and Roy are really his aunt and uncle. Monet says yes, adding that they're her half-siblings, sharing the same father, before telling him to stop with the questions. He hesitantly asks, "Will they make us leave this house?" Rosa responds, "No one can do that. This is our home." Then Keith asks about his father and when he'll return. Monet reassures him that he'll be back soon and reminds him that no matter what happens, they'll always be together. Then we see Andy and Monet having a conversation. Andy recalls how this place used to be their childhood hideout. She notes how it's now been turned into a shop. Monet explains that she got their father's permission to run her business here, and he agreed. Andy asks if the shop does well, and Monet replies that it does sometimes. Andy comments that at least Monet is busy while she is just her mother's assistant. Monet gently tells her that their father often asked about her, especially in his final days. He always had Andy and Roy in his thoughts and loved them deeply. Just then, Roy walks in and tells Andy their mom is looking for her. The second day of prayer begins. Adele is seen coughing and escapes the prayer. After a while, everyone leaves after the prayer. Frida tells Monet that Henry is still missing. Then Adele calls Monet to talk. She informs Monet that an appraiser is coming tomorrow to check the property. Monet asks if she is selling the land. Adele asks her to prepare the land title so she can show the appraiser. She asks her to accompany them tomorrow, as she doesn't know where the land exactly is. Rosa interrupts. "You were gone for almost 3 decades. Your kids never visited Pablo when sick. They didn't attend the wake and the burial. Why are you so quick to decide?" Monet stops her mom, and Rosa leaves. Adele asks, "What did you say?" Monet says nothing, and Adele leaves. The scene cuts to Monet, waking up to a knock at the door. She opens it and sees 2 children standing with their backs to her. She asks where their guardian is. They turn around and reply, "Inside," pointing toward the first floor. As Monet looks in that direction, she sees several figures standing silently inside. Startled, she jolts awake, only to find the same 2 children now standing beside her. She jolts awake again, for real this time. The next morning, they head to the land, a crow quietly trailing behind. The appraiser examines the property and says that it's a great location near the main road. It will sell easily. Adele remarks that they know nothing about farming and that the land looks neglected. Rosa urges Monet to speak up. Monet explains that the land became neglected because their father fell ill, and she had to be the one to care for him. Suddenly, Keith points and everyone turns to see a flock of locusts swirling in distance. In an instant, more locusts rise from the ground and rush toward them. Alarmed, they all sprint to the car, but they manage to get inside just in time. Many of the insects slam into the vehicle and die on impact. Shaken by the sudden attack, they sit in stunned silence as the swarm passes. The scene cuts to a restaurant where both families sit at separate tables as a wedding takes place nearby. Monet and Adele reflect on their husbands. Rosa urges Monet not to let Adele and her family treat her this way, that she has rights too and shouldn't let them walk all over her. When Monet tells her to stop, Rosa gets angry, breaks a bowl, and storms off. On the 3rd day of prayers, Andy tells Monet that Adele wants to talk. Adele asks if Monet holds the house and land titles. Monet says yes, they've been paying taxes. Adele reveals she plans to sell the house before it deteriorates. Monet asks where they're supposed to live and what will happen to her livelihood. Adele tells her to find a new place. Monet argues that the house and farm were only neglected because she was caring for their father. Despite his illness, he sent money, something she also managed. Adele snaps, asking if they should be indebted to him for doing his duty. Monet says if she's angry at him, she shouldn't take it out on her. Adele says she doesn't care about Pablo and insists she's asserting her and her children's rights. When Monet says she's also Pablo's child, Adele calls her illegitimate. Rosa explodes, flips the table, saying Adele is only family on paper, and storms off. Monet leaves too. Roy, shaken, says he's done. Andy wonders if their father is angry with them. Roy says they should have attended the wake and burial, but Adele never let them. Adele slaps him, and he storms off. Later, Adele is seen throwing away all of Pablo's medicines. Monet asks why, and Adele replies, "That's what we do with useless things." Monet apologizes, saying the farmland is rightfully hers, but pleads to keep the house for herself and Keith. That's what Pablo wanted. She admits she never brought it up earlier, because Adele wouldn't have believed her. Monet shares that in his final days, Pablo repeatedly asked for his children and mentioned Adele. Rosa listens quietly from outside. Monet says she tried reaching Adele, but when there was no response, they buried him without waiting. Adele snaps, saying she never wanted to see him, dead or alive. Monet insists Pablo loved her. Adele says she hated him ever since she found out about his affair with Rosa. Rosa, sitting outside, says she never knew Pablo was married, and never meant to destroy a family. Adele recalls how Pablo brought Monet into their home, and she had no say. She tried to accept Monet, but her presence only reminded her of betrayal. She says, "Seeing you only brings questions. Was I not enough? What did I lack? He didn't just cheat, he had a child with her." Rosa says to stop punishing Monet, saying she's a good child and innocent in all this. Adele yells, "You call that love? Do you know how much it hurt?" Rosa, in tears, says, "Don't blame Monet. It was my fault." Then we see Rosa calling out for Pablo. She spots him and rushes to him, but he vanishes. He reappears behind her, and Rosa turns to see him. The scene cuts to Roy packing to leave. As he changes his shirt, something drops onto his back. He checks in the mirror. A leash is stuck to him. He notices more leeches clinging to the ceiling. They start falling, latching onto his body and sucking blood. One drops into his mouth. Panicked, he opens the door and comes face to face with the demon. Then they both vanish. Henry and Roy then briefly appear in the painting before disappearing. The next morning, Rosa apologizes to Monet for losing her temper, but Monet brushes it off and takes Jack's call. She tells him about Adele's visit and their plan to sell her father's property. Rosa glances at the painting and recalls old memories. Jack, actually at a resort, lies that he's at the hospital and will return once his son is discharged. Suddenly, Adele panics. Roy is missing. She lashes out at Monet, calling the house haunted and accusing her of being a homewrecker. "You let a married man live in my house, just like your mother, an adulterer," Rosa snaps, hits Adele with a rod, and Monet pulls her away. Rosa tells Monet, "Learn to fight," and storms off. The scene cuts to Adele and Andy reporting Roy missing to the police. As Andy's allergy worsens, Frida informs an officer about Henry's disappearance. The fourth day of prayer begins. Meanwhile, Andy begs Adele to leave, showing her worsening allergy. Adele refuses, claiming the house and land as hers, saying Monet should leave instead. Adele says Andy doesn't know what it feels like to be abandoned and leaves. Suddenly, the door shuts. Andy then notices that maggots are crawling out of her rashes on her foot. Terrified, she tries to run, but finds the door locked. The maggots start coming out from her hand allergy too, and her face too. Adele knocks, and Andy screams for help. Adele calls out for help. The others rush over. Monet rushes in with the keys. Inside, the demon appears. Andy turns, but when the door opens, she's gone. Only straw remains. Her image briefly appears in the painting, then vanishes. Then we see Rosa approaches the painting, where a memory of a man painting her flashes. Overcome with anger, she grabs scissors and stabs the painting, tearing through the Scarecrow. As she leaves, thunder strikes. She turns back to see the painting whole again. On day 5 of prayer, Frida introduces Georgia to Monet. Georgia begins a ritual in the antique shop and warns that a curse lingers in the house. Adele overhears as a man passes behind her. Georgia asks if anything new entered the house. Rosa tells her about the painting and leads her to it. Georgia chants a spell and blows sacred ash on it, revealing the trapped images of many people in it, including Henry, Roy, and Andy. Shaken, Georgia runs off in fear. Adele asks Monet for help. Together, they take the painting and head to one of Adele's former colleague, Professor Manansala. As they reach there, they take the painting inside. Adele coughs. Manansala examines the piece and identifies the artist, Silvio Madamba, a painter from the 50s and 60s. He shows them Silvio's work through a projector, noting the shift from pastoral scenes to sinister subjects. Eventually, strawmen, scarecrows begin appearing in his art. He shares a newspaper clipping about Silvio's death, recounting the urban legend. Silvio fell for a woman far younger than him. When Silvio made his feelings known, the women ran away. He became obsessed. Unable to replace her, he lured women to his home, tortured them, and painted their corpses using his own blood. He posed them as scarecrows, each a twisted homage to his lost muse. Meanwhile, at home, Keith sleeps in his room. Frida enters, gently tucks him in. As she steps out, the lights flicker off, and she sees 2 children who says, "Let's play." The lights return. She rushes back to Keith's room, but finds the door locked. Inside, the entity appears and attacks Keith, but his talisman protects him. Frida bangs on the door. She then runs, but a woman's hanging body drops in front of her. Meanwhile, Keith wakes up, but his talisman shields him from the entity's attack. The entity eventually disappears, and Keith hides under the bed. Frida tries to escape, but the door slams shut. Haunted by spirits, she eventually comes face to face with the entity. Her scream echoes, and only straw remains. Her image briefly appears in the painting, then vanishes. On the other hand, Manansala shows them the pictures of Silvio's muse, which turns out to be Rosa. Monet is stunned knowing this. On the way home, Adele confronts Monet. "Tell me you had nothing to do with the evil that haunts my family." Rosa replies, "I was just a child. I only posed for money. I did nothing wrong." Adele scoffs. "Besides being homewreckers, are you witches too?" Rosa, tearful, says, "He treated me like a daughter until I realized he wanted more. I was orphaned. I didn't know better. He tried to molest me. I ran. Then I met Pablo and had you, Monet. I never thought I'd see Silvio again. But one day, I picked you up from school, and there he was." Monet asks, "That was him?" Adele yells. "Where is my family?" Monet shouts. "I don't know. Just stop." They eventually reach home, and when they enter, they find straw scattered across the floor. Alarmed, Monet calls out for Keith and Frida. Keith runs to her and hugs her tight. Later, he tells her about the entity and how the talisman from his dad protected him. On day 6 of the prayers, Adele begins coughing violently. She gags and pulls something out of her mouth. The door slams shut, but is blocked by a table. Suddenly, rats pour into the room. Rosa rushes toward the commotion, with Monet and Keith behind her. Inside, Adele pulls a rat from her mouth, horrified by the sight. As Monet and Keith enter, the rat vanishes and Keith's talisman activates. The entity charges toward them. Everyone freezes in fear. Rosa grabs the talisman and hurls it at the entity, which instantly disappears into thin air. Then we see Monet drags the painting outside as Rosa, Adele, and Keith watch from the window. She sets it on fire. On the 7th day of prayer, as the family prays, the lights go out. They continue by candlelight until the power returns, followed by a strange noise. Investigating, they're shocked to find the painting back in the store. Just then, Adele receives a call from Manansala. The scene cuts to Manansala, showing them that everyone who owned the painting mysteriously vanished. The last known owner is a wealthy Filipino-Chinese businessman, Gayang Exifei. Monet spots Jack in the photo, and she asks Adele to come with her. They visit Georgia, who apologizes for fleeing earlier. She introduces her pet crow, saying it's been watching them. It smells the plague in their home. Locusts, worms, rats, leeches. The Scarecrow won't stop until everyone's taken. Monet shows Keith's talisman to her, and she finds red soil inside. She says, "Someone wants this child to survive. The crow knows where to find more of that soil." At the red soil site, Georgia crafts talismans. Monet asks for 4. Georgia replies, "Your guardian doesn't need one." Surprised, Monet asks, "You see her?" Georgia nods. "Yes, I'm blessed like you." Adele asks, "Is Rosa here?" Georgia confirms. "She's been around for a while." Georgia asks Rosa when she last saw the painter. Rosa says it was a Friday. She left early to pick up Monet from school, not expecting to see him again. Scared, she ran with Monet, but he caught up. His brakes failed, and he hit Rosa with his car. "But I knew one thing. I had to save Monet." Georgia asks, "Why haven't you crossed over?" Rosa replies, "Monet is ill. I can't leave her." Monet adds, "She never left my side." We then see past moments where Rosa was invisible to others. Georgia concludes, "Like you, Rosa, the painter still lingers through his masterpiece, the Scarecrow, and he's found you." Adele asks, "Are these talismans our only protection?" Georgia laughs and says, "If you want to end the curse, the one who brought it must die." Adele says, "It's Jack." On their way back home, Monet visualizes all the people who have gone missing from her life, and then she sees Jack. She jolts awake, steps out of the car, and is struck by the realization that Jack was only ever with her for money. Breaking down, she cries, saying he never truly loved her. Adele comforts her and urges her to stay strong. Monet sobs uncontrollably, and suddenly her condition worsens, and she collapses. At that moment, Jack receives a message. Dad, Mom is no more. A twisted smile appears on his face as he shares the message with his partners. He then returns to Monet's house, calling out for Keith. Just then, Monet appears in front of him, and Adele hits Jack from behind, knocking him out. On the 8th day of prayer, Jack regains consciousness and finds himself tied to a chair. Monet tells everyone to wait for her downstairs. Monet turns to Jack and asks, "What did you see in me?" "Just a small-town girl labeled as crazy. So why me?" Jack replies, "Because I love you." Monet retorts, "I know about your plan to get rid of all of us and claim my father's property. You left us with this." She reveals the painting. Jack tries to tempt her, saying, "Let's split the money. Let your stepmother die. She should be the one tied here." Monet, with pain in her eyes, says, "You're not the Jack I loved," and walks away. Just then, the lights go out. Thunder rumbles within the painting, which begins to come alive. Jack starts seeing ghosts surrounding him. Meanwhile, outside, Monet is crying. Rosa consoles her while Keith embraces Monet. Inside, the Scarecrow emerges from the painting, and Jack's terrified screams echo out. Then everything falls silent. On the 9th and final day of prayer, Adele and Monet are seen praying near Pablo's grave. After the ritual, Monet prepares to leave with Adele and Keith. Rosa watches from a distance. Monet turns around and calls out Rosa to come with her. Rosa replies, "It's time for me to go. Don't forget your medicine." Monet pleads, "You can't leave. Stay with me." Rosa says, "I'm ready, and so are you. You have Keith and Aunt Adele. Ask her to forgive me and take care of her. Growing old alone is hard." Monet hugs her tightly, begging her to stay one more day. Rosa replies, "I'll visit you in your dreams." Adele asks, "What's going on?" Monet replies softly, "Mom is saying goodbye and asking for your forgiveness." Monet says, "I love you, Mom," and walks away. In the final scene, a garbage truck comes by, collecting trash from outside Monet's house, and lifts a broken, shattered version of the Scarecrow painting. The screen fades to black, marking the end of the film. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the chills, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a scare. Until next time, stay spooky.